I'd be nervous.
It is active.
Just so you know, everything is on, right, Romero?
Yes, I have confirmation from Public Act.
Great.
Are we ready to start?
We're ready to start. I don't know, you want to introduce the new member?
Yes,
That we absent last time?
yes, what I was gonna do first is, thank y'all for being here this morning. We look forward to working, through the ground rules today. I wanted to, what I usually do, and I did not do it the last time, but I usually have two sign-in sheets so that each party has an original. And I failed to do that the last time, but we had one, so I had an exact copy made, and you can compare the original to this one when we caucus. That way we don't take up that much time. But this is for you, and we can compare that. And so for today, I also have two sign-in sheets, and I'll ask that everybody sign in both. That way we all have an original of the day that we were there. And for my new team members, I guess what we'll do is go ahead and we'll introduce our team again. We'll go ahead and start over here with Jesus.
Good morning. My name is Jesus Esparza III. I represent payroll in the budget department in the city about 25 years. And I've done a few contracts for both.
Good morning, Rosario Cabello, Deputy City Manager for the city, almost 23 years, also this November. Mostly concentrating also in the finance area initially, then Chief Operations Officer, now Deputy. And so I've also done several police and fire contracts.
Okay. Roxy Stevens. I am the hired outside legal counsel, and I'm also going to be the lead negotiator for the city of Laredo, and I look forward to working with you. I've done several collective bargaining sessions with fire before.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Teniente. I am with the Human Resources Department, and I have been with the city 26 years. And this is officially my first collective bargaining. I do the legwork, the rest of the part, but this is the first time that I'll be joining this team. Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Juan Caballero. I'm with the City Attorney's Office. My first collective bargaining agreement session since I was out the last one, so I look forward to all of us working together and hopefully with the city's best interest in mind.
Good morning, Romero Vázquez Garcia. I'm the Director for Information Services and Telecommunications. And I've been with the city just over 20 years.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jose Muniz. I've been with the Laredo Fire Department for about 10 years. Currently the Vice President of the Laredo Firefighters Association.
Good morning. My name is Oscar Delgado. I've been with the fire department over 6 years. I am the second Vice President of the association. Look forward to working with all of you.
Morning, Carlos Lozano. Been with the city just under 20 years. I am the president of the Laredo Fire Association 872. This is technically my second contract negotiation.
Good morning, my name is Victor Torres. I've been with the fire department 23 years. I'm currently the Sergeant at Arms with the Firefighters Association.
My name is Adán Alvarado. I'm the Texas State Association District Vice President. I represent about roughly 1,900 firefighters in the state of Texas. I'm also a Laredo firefighter. I've been on the job for 23 years, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Some familiar faces, and there's some new ones. But it's always good to make friends, right?
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Leo Mendoza. I'm with the Texas State Association of Firefighters. I'm the field service representative for our district. I'm also a firefighter in McAllen. I've been on the job for 14 years.
Okay, and I am passing around the sign-in sheets so that everybody can sign both, and we'll just continue to do that as we go. For today, I believe that we're waiting for the union to present their side of the proposed ground rules, and so we'll do that. And then as we have before, I know that we have exchanged some dates for some future negotiations. So at the very end, we'll take care of logistical issues, and I would like to at least set the next 1 or 2 sessions before we leave here today, so that we know, we know what the schedule is, and we can work on that.
You know, if they're gonna be like staggered, or would we be able to do some back to back, or?
So, that's something that we're gonna talk about, because we don't know, depending on how the proposals are gonna be, if the union is prepared to, present numerous proposals, that would be something that we could effectuate for 2 days, and it would be efficient. If there's something that, I guess as we go further into the negotiations, when we get into the meat of the things, that might require a little bit more time, especially from the city, so that we can obtain the information that we need to properly evaluate the proposals on the table.
Okay.
Okay? But we're open to whatever works,
Yeah.
basically.
Of course, and scheduling.
Sure, and scheduling. Okay, I think that's all I have from, just for the opening and from our side at this point.
We had, I believe Ralph had went ahead and forwarded you the ground rules that we had, had you use last time, 2 contracts ago with the city. We're proposing basically the same ground rules.
Okay, and I may need to check on that, because the only one I recall, I'm looking right now, from Ralph, go to Rafael. So the ones that he sent me, and maybe he sent me some more recently. So this is what my question is. I have some I received on 5/12/2022, and it was, Ralph Torres sent them to you and copied me, to
Yes.
Charlie and copied me. And he stated that Carlos and Roxy, these were the only ground rules I had in my files for Laredo. I do not think these were the final draft. So that's what I have. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have it here printed out, basically the same one, just changing the dates of those ground rules.
You have extra copies?
Yes.
Let's have an extra one, make some copies for all.
Okay.
That's my last copy.
Okay, no, we can make additional copies if you need.
Okay.
Do you need,
No.
Fabulous. How many do you need?
5?
5? And is it 1 page?
I believe, yes, it is 1 page. Yes, they're all the same.
Can we also receive this in an email?
Yes.
I guess a Word format?
Yes.
And these were the ground rules that you stated that were from several years ago?
2 contracts ago, so
2 contracts.
approximately 8 years ago, 2014.
Okay. Did you have a signed copy of those
No.
ground rules?
No, I believe from that time, we actually just went ahead without the ground rules. That was a contract I was involved in, because what they proposed, what we proposed, they was like, no, we will go ahead and do away with them, and we'll just continue negotiations. Like I said, one of the issues from the last ground rules is, it is a signed copy, except it couldn't be confirmed on our part. Like I say, one of the individuals has a sign, he doesn't recall any signed, ground rules. And then the other individual, which was the union president, passed away approximately almost 4 years ago.
Okay, so, on the, and these are the 2018 ground rules?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, and these were also signed by all of the city team as well as the
Yes.
fire team as well?
Yes.
Did you check with any of the additional fire team?
As I say, no, there was no recollection of what was actually signed, and actually on the fire team side, it had it had two signatures.
So is that and is that is that the issue that you have with the 2018 rules?
That wasn't the only issue, it was also one of the proposed articles, which was, and that was, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it because, but anyway. Under Article 6, subsection A. Article 6. Yes. No,
Of the ground rules?
Of the ground rules.
The city's proposed ground rules, that's on page 4?
Yes.
And it would be 6 is the contacts during negotiations?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I believe that we did have some discussions on section 6. Are there any
Yes.
additional comments that you would like to add under section 6 so that we may take into consideration when we're reviewing your proposed ground rules?
The initial ones, we didn't have a huge issue with what was proposed in 2018. The copy that you gave us, there it was more of it wasn't just any talks, it was more substantive talks, where we're not gonna actively negotiate with anybody outside of this team, which is basically what we understood. Because, I mean, the city, we still need to maintain our contact with our councilmen. If they ask us, we can't just outright deny, any information, we can't open up of any information. But at the same time, they also, as they're getting information, it'd be good for them to understand both perspectives of what's being negotiated, not just a one-sided, issue, one-sided deal. Like I say, we're all for negotiating in good faith, and I understand that that's the intent of that article. And in reality, we do want it. Like we want to negotiate in good faith. I just think that this is very limiting.
So you
on the
still want the
association's end.
ability to discuss items of negotiation with the city council?
No, if we're asked about items to be able to talk about. We're not gonna go to directly to city council, because if we're making headway here, there's no reason to go anywhere out there, any purpose outside of basically what we're standing right here.
So
I mean,
if you're asked, then you do.
If, basically what I'm saying, is because we are still in contact with
And
different.
so if the language would say, if asked, we will respond, and only then? I'm just asking.
Why don't you just kind of mirror what they got for the last contract?
If to come to an agreement, we'd be more favorable to agree to what was proposed in the last one instead of the one on
On the
this one.
20,
On the 2018.
we have to have the-
I mean, if you look at it, the city council represents, their districts respectfully and their constituents in their district. And they need the information to be able to make the best decision while they're up there on the dais.
Right.
And voting on this contract. So if they have all the information, I mean, a good representative of their people is gonna be asking all the questions that need to be so they can come up to a sound decision and make a vote.
That's right.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're approached, we are able to give our perspective of how the contract negotiations going. But like Charlie says, if in the event that we're making headway, I mean, I don't even foresee why. I mean, if both sides can go up to city council and say, you know what, we worked this out, we put in the time, and we're in agreement of this, I mean, there should be no reason why we're gonna be.
Okay,
approaching
so, and one of the things that I just want to reiterate is that, when we're bargaining, we each have, the city and the association has their designated bargaining teams, and they do that for a reason. I have been hired by the city council and approved by the city council in order to represent the city, including the city council, with regard to these negotiations, so that when we have the negotiations, they actually happen in an open meeting in public here at this table, and that the public can be able to see and take in and ask questions and things like that. So that's the reason that, number one, it's a public meeting and we have to notice it, because when we have discussions about the negotiable items, subject to negotiation under 174, that we do it here out in the open and under an agenda to discuss them. And we also have been designated by the city to be the point of contact for these negotiations. Now we have, I have to answer questions to my clients, which includes the city councils, to make sure that they understand what was passed at the table and what was discussed and the issues at stake. And of course, this is why it's called negotiations, because we have two different positions, and we just have to, at the end of the day, figure out how do we bridge those together. And that's another reason that this meeting is open. People can review it. People can go and see for themselves what we discuss here at the table. So it becomes concerning when, aside from what is in an open meeting, that this side discussion that's not going to be public can happen. And those are the things that we're concerned about. And what we want to do is protect the integrity of the process, protect the integrity of the Open Meetings Act, and protect the integrity between the two parties, saying we're going to negotiate this in good faith, and we're going to do it here at the table. And that's one of the main reasons that we've done this, that this was in here. In fact, just a cursory review, the Section 6 were the exact same articles that were agreed to and signed in 2018 that were utilized the last time for the last contract. And I think that this helps further the negotiations and build the trust and communication between the parties, because it becomes very difficult to actually discuss the issues at the table when there's a side conversation going on, and we're not even privy, there may be other information that we need to discuss here at the table, and somebody maybe forgot to say something, or, things like that. So that's the reason that it's here, and we were not really doing anything more than what was on this particular section that was already agreed to and done last time around. So what we'll do is we'll take your proposed ground rules and we'll review them, and what we're going to look to is the intent and the purpose of these ground rules and what they're supposed to serve, and we'll work on them, and we're going to caucus, and then we'll hopefully come up with a proposal maybe that we can agree to. So, okay?
Sure.
All right. And before we adjourn for the caucus, I think we need to. On this, yeah, I did notice that there's no signature page on this. Are you proposing that there's not going to be a signature on these?
We can,
Okay.
we have no issue with that. That's the only
This
thing
is
I
just
have.
the substantive part.
Yes.
I think we need to pin down are these them? No, this is the,
This one's.
okay, these are the ones, okay. If you want to look at those and see, make sure that the two copies are the same. Okay, and then I'll do the same. And then we each get one, and this is the official
Yes.
sign-in sheet for today. And then, while we're here,
Yes.
which one's the original? I wrote copy on the back of the copy, okay. This is the original sign-in sheet for May 20th, if you want to compare the copy that I gave you. The May 20th? We can do that after the caucus if y'all need. Oh, there it is. Okay. Thank you. Just so we can get that out of the way. Okay, Yeah, just please be sure to email me the proposed ground rules.
Yes.
So that we can work on them.
Yes.
And I think that we're ready to caucus.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I think we're just confirming that we're,
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, before starting, we're having issues apparently with we connect to the Wi-Fi, but nothing comes up, so that's kind of on our part.
okay.
I don't know if the city can help us anything with that.
Yeah, we'll give you a Wi-Fi. Y'all have a passcode?
We got the passcode and it connects, but
It doesn't connect?
it connects, he couldn't connect, mine connected, but like everything's blocked,
Okay,
nothing.
question. Are you doing it on your phone?
No, my laptop.
Your laptop? Okay, yeah, we'll look at it.
Yeah, we can look at it.
Yeah, that's,
Beto can probably help, after we finish.
yeah, and that's what the issue right now, so that's why I was having trouble sending you the email, because I couldn't do it till
Okay.
I couldn't access my email.
No problem, okay.
And
Okay, okay. Thank you all for your patience. As we were discussing, we had some technical issues on our side as well, and so it took a little bit longer than anticipated. But we thank you for your proposal on the ground rules. In reviewing the proposal on the ground rules, there's a lot that is not addressed in the ground rules. Most of the issues are fine, and are actually reflected in the proposed ground rules that we first proposed. It seems, and then in reviewing your comments and discussion about the proposed ground rules that we had the last go around on, I think it was May 20th, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
It all comes down to the contact issue.
Okay.
And the contact with the respective parties, during the negotiations. And in your proposal, the paragraph that states this says, all negotiations shall be conducted exclusively between the designated bargaining representatives of the city and the union. We agree with that. Neither party shall make any effort to bypass such representatives of the other party during collective bargaining for a new contract unless an impasse exists as defined by section 174.152 of the Texas Local Government Code. That meaning that we've arrived at that process that is statutorily defined as impasse, pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement. The issue we have, the major issue that we have is that the next sentence is in direct conflict to the previous sentence that I just read. And it says, nothing in this section shall be construed to preclude the union bargaining team from communicating with its members, staff, the city manager, and city council. And the issue that we have is the communication with the city manager and the city council, because as we discussed, we have designated bargaining teams under the collective bargaining process under chapter 174, that requires that we bargain in good faith, and we do it in an open meeting, available to the public, and then we do it here on the table. So what I have done, and we took that into consideration, I used some of the language, I used the language that you proposed here. And I have I have added to, and I just used the last one that we did just because it explains like the processes, so there's no confusion as to how everything is kept and what the purpose is and why we even have these ground rules and what we're wanting to accomplish here. So I'll keep one for myself. Here's 8 copies, will that be enough? Okay, and then I'm gonna email it to you as well. Unfortunately, one of the technical problems we were having was getting this printed in color, and so, the changes are not in color, but they are underlined and outlined, and I'll go through that with you. So say that again? Yes. So, and again, I went through and looked at all my notes and the comments that we had previously discussed on our proposal.
and I also took into consideration, or I and the bargaining team took into consideration the ground rules that you have proposed. And I think that it is, and there was a lot of people that weren't here at the last time, but I'm going to again read I think the purpose is really important as to what the ground rules are for. And it's in section 1A. The purpose of these ground rules is to establish guidelines for the negotiations of a successor collective bargaining agreement between the association and the city. The association and the city recognize their long-term interdependent relationship. The parties acknowledge a mutual interest in working together to resolve their differences in a manner that is fiscally responsible and provides a desirable work environment for employees and high-quality, uninterrupted service to the citizens of the city. The parties have agreed to pursue, to the extent practicable, a joint problem-solving approach to labor negotiations in an effort to establish a working relationship based on trust and cooperation rather than confrontation. To this end, the parties commit an open and honest communication and a sincere effort to understand each other's point of view and issues which must be resolved. The parties will strive to achieve creative, sustainable, and fiscally responsible solutions to issues that are mutually satisfactory to both of their interests. The ground rules may be modified in writing by mutual agreement of the parties. I think it's really important that we establish a purpose and everybody's understanding why we're here. And that's because we recognize how important the firefighters are to the city. And the city's goal is to make sure that our firefighters are adequately compensated at a competitive rate, and also be able to maintain that we can sustain the department and the employment of all the firefighters and continue to be doing this for years on end. And of course, we have budget considerations and things, other things that the city has to consider in doing this. And we always work it out. And a lot of it, quite frankly, requires creative thinking. And that's what we're here for. And we're open for that. Section 2 is the bargaining teams. I entered in the names of everything is the same except on E. I entered in the names of the bargaining people here, and I don't know if that's correct. I just need that to be confirmed. This entire section just basically explains that these are the bargaining teams that have been designated by each party. And I think that is also important in that your membership, the bargaining unit which you represent, has designated everybody sitting here at this table as their bargaining representatives to do this here in the public. The same for the city. My client and my party includes the city management and the city council and the city staff. And I have been designated as the lead negotiator along with Rebecca Hayward. And this is our designated bargaining team that is set to represent the city in its entirety, and to include the city council. It also goes forth, the only people authorized to sit at the table shall be the designated bargaining teams. The chief negotiators are the lead for each of their teams, and they can they determine how their team operates or communicates and things like that. It also says that nothing in these ground rules shall prevent or preclude any bargaining team from having members present for purposes of consultation and confirmation of facts, figures, processes, and procedures. And each bargaining team may freely consult to seek advice from respective personnel who may sit behind the team and be available for consultation. Now, there's some timelines here, and we're willing to work with it on who, if there's an alternate like chief negotiator, that we provide notice to each other. We can be flexible on that as necessary. There is an ability, I believe, here for anybody to, we were open to having it waived or just shorten amount of time. But the reason that we put this in here, and it was something that was agreed to in the last bargaining session in 2018, was that so we know that if we're sending over information or communicating about the upcoming bargaining session, that we make sure we're communicating with the right people.
Yes.
Okay, and that everybody who needs the information gets the information that's needed. Section oh, I just saw on another typo, excuse me. So it's another section 2, but we can fix that. Is the authority of the chief negotiators. And again, this sets out the chief negotiator's authority, basically saying you have authority over your own team, and the lead negotiator on the city has the authority over their own team. It talks about tentative agreements, and this is all the same as what was agreed to in this last contract, which was the last ground rules for 2018.
What section for tentative agreements is the thing?
Under, well, it's on page 2, and I apologize, it's a typo I didn't catch. It's under the second, 2, authority of the chief negotiators,
Letter.
2D. It's at the bottom of page 2. And I can go through it if you want. On 2, the authority of the chief negotiators. The chief negotiator for each party shall have the authority to lead the negotiations and shall be responsible for maintaining order with respect to his or her respective bargaining team. B, only the chief negotiator of each party may authorize or allow members of the bargaining team to address a point or make a presentation, and that's from your own bargaining team. The chief C, the chief negotiator for each party with the consent of the bargaining team may make tentative agreements or commitments regarding specific terms and conditions raised in the contract negotiations. Tentative agreements that are in writing and initialed by the chief negotiators shall be treated as concluded and off the table, thereby allowing the parties to proceed to the other issues. D, the parties understand and agree that tentative agreements shall not be implemented during the bargaining process. All tentative agreements remain subject to the final formal approval of the contract document by the City of Laredo City Council under a duly posted and action item posted in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, and approval by the majority vote of the association and its members, consistent with their internal processes, procedures, and bylaws in accordance with the requirements of Section 174.152 of the Texas Local Government Code.
So once they're tentatively agreed on, we move on to the next one.
Yes, that is what this says, and of course, they're all subject to approval of the final contract.
But there's no means to readdress them in the event that something else in the contract is gonna make us have to readdress another one?
I believe that if the parties,
It's happened before.
right, I believe, and we can put that in there, that if the parties agree to address a tentative agreement that may be affected by another proposal, we're open to that.
And
I don't want to limit that.
Yeah,
I don't want to limit that, but for the purposes of moving forward, you know, there's certain items that we're working through. For instance, you know, we're probably all going to start with, you know, these articles are okay, we're going to TA them because there's no changes, something like that.
and we've had,
And-
I guess when we, I guess with how laws change and everything else, we might have to address something back onto the definition.
Absolutely.
And we have to make a change, it's already tentatively agreed on, but we have to go back to it to make the proper change.
I
I mean,
agree.
issues like that.
Right, and I'm making that commitment to you that we're not gonna limit that or let that be an obstacle. I think that the reason that it's written this way is that once we have a tentative agreement, it's an issue that has been resolved, unless it's brought up by another party saying, hey, you know, now this tentative agreement now has to change because there is an issue in this other article, or this new law just came out, or, you know, some legislation just passed, that now we have to address it again. Or now we're dealing with this article and we need to either define something or change the definition. We go back, and usually we do definitions at the end, but that's open for discussion. There's nothing that prevents that.
Do we need to put it in writing saying that we
We
can go
can,
back?
and we would be more than happy to consider any proposed language with that intent. Okay? But you remember that when we're working through this, if everything's just kind of hanging in the air, you know, that may create an obstacle to moving forward. We will address tentative agreements that need to be addressed as the issues come up, and if it's relevant to another issue, okay?
And yeah, and I mean, for the most part, I think it was the last contract, I don't know if you remember, it was, we had a couple that kind of like commingled with each other, and we had to readdress them. But for the most part, whenever we TA, I mean, that's the agreement, and we move on.
Sure.
We haven't had an issue, it's just like certain language that needs to be brushed up in other articles to address what we're trying to accomplish.
So, some of the things that I have done with, related articles where, one has an impact on a potential article that we just haven't touched yet, is that we verbally agree to, the language as it goes, subject to how the other article will affect it, kind of deal. And we can package those kind of and talk about them at the same time.
Probably be better.
Yeah, and I think that's just more efficient and that makes sense.
Yeah, 'cause
Sometimes you can't see everything in a vacuum.
Yeah, doing it the other day would be somewhat counterproductive, where, well, we already touched this issue, so we limited on this one. We can actually negotiate them together. I think it'd be time saving, and cost effective for the city.
Absolutely. I mean, this contract has, if you think about, this contract's a very big document and it encompasses a lot of very important things. And the thing that we want it to do is make sense and flow and work together. We don't want a contract that works against, where one article is in conflict with the other. So I agree, I agree with the concept and the intent, and we're more than willing to, consider any language that you would like to propose, in that, or we can work together on some language that would effectuate that understanding.
Work on it together and come up with something.
Okay.
Just to address, just so we're both comfortable with it in the event that it does happen to me. Like I said, I think this is my fourth contract, and it has happened in the past where we just need to, and most of the time, we're just in agreement with the city side and we do it, even though it wasn't addressed in the ground rules, but, I don't see why we would do it.
Yeah, and I think that's still the spirit of why we're here. We want you to do that. Okay? All right, so the next section, I'm just putting this a note on the record for myself that we need to fix those numbers. I messed up on. Okay. Section 3, negotiation sessions. Now, you had proposed in your ground rules that we would have a minimum of once a week, every Thursday, like for, every week. I actually, we looked at it and I get what that's doing. But I feel like it may be limiting or pigeonholing us and not giving us the information that we need or the proposals that we need to get done. I think that, as I was discussing before, at the beginning of the negotiations, when we're doing.
Before we're moving on also on E and section 1, I know Ralph is in communication through email and will be attending some of these.
Right.
And he's not specified on there.
On E, on the section 1, or section 2 bargaining teams? He's actually listed as number 1.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry.
Well, it's, there you have Carlos Lozano and Oscar Delgado, but you don't have them on the,
That was
on B.
We had understood that the 6 members were not gonna include the negotiator, that was gonna be our.
So on section 1, right, the bargaining teams on section 2 bargaining teams, B, we left blank because we still we're not clear, I don't know if y'all have designated lead negotiators, yet.
Yes.
So that would be, the 2 lead negotiators would be and or. So it'd be, Carlos, it would be you, and I don't know who the other one. Okay.
So that would free up the spot to.
So then.
Leo Mendoza in that list.
So then the 2 lead negotiators do not count on the number, what is it, 6?
Yes.
So if you look at letter A, 2 bargaining teams, A, each respective bargaining team shall consist of no more than 6 members, not counting the and we could put chief negotiators, S. That would fix that, seated at the table. And so I think for you can propose to change it to, on C, we just listed, instead of my name, we just put lead negotiators. We can do that for your team. I didn't know who was gonna be there. So we can do shall be the lead negotiators. And then plus the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And of course, the lead negotiators will not be included in the 6 spots that would be taken up. Do you understand the concept?
Yeah, because also one that was left off was Alberto Chapa.
Oh, yes. He hasn't, yeah, I didn't write, it's because I was going off of who was here.
Yes.
We
So-
also put alternate member, Leo Mendoza, you put him with the other spot.
Yeah.
Oh, Leo Mendoza is not gonna be an alternate?
Well, with Oscar Delgado being
Moved up, then he would
as
go.
negotiator.
Oh, I get it, I see. And then y'all can name, I don't know how you want to name an alternate. What we did it is, we listed the departments just depending on the availability of city staff, because they have obligations, of course.
Yes.
So we designated somebody from, we put the Health and Benefits Division or the Finance Department, depending on what the issues are that day and availability. So I'm leaving it up to you. I just put Leo Mendoza because I wanted to make sure that I had his name in there so I didn't forget to put him in here. But you can designate it how you want.
I think we didn't want to specify just one person. I think we want to put alternate members, maybe past or current members of the
Okay.
association.
So that's fine. Okay, you can propose that and that would be fine. Okay, so back, I left off at negotiation sessions, and I was talking about where you had proposed once a week. I think what we had proposed,
At
and,
least, I think, right?
say that again?
It's at least once a week, doesn't hinder us from meeting multiple times during the week.
So that was what was proposed here. What I propose, I think, doesn't have those kinds of limitations, and as I discussed, I anticipate that the negotiation sessions, depending on what's happening, well, especially at the beginning, are gonna happen more frequently because we're gonna be presenting each other proposals at that point. And then as we move into the counter proposals and require more information, we need to make sure that each party has the necessary time to get that information. Now, depending on what kind of information we need or whether we need to calculate something and the availability, I would hope that we would be able to get it done within a week and meet, but we also have to have the ability to meet, just as you, we're not just dealing with one person that we have to advise. We have a lot of people on our side, just as you have the membership that you have to advise. So we have to be able to have time on both sides to get input from our parties and our clients in order to help, help construct the counter proposals and be able to have a fruitful discussion and hopefully come to a resolution on each proposal. So the way that we have it is letter A under section 3 negotiation sessions, the parties shall meet and agree upon a negotiation schedule, and the chief negotiators be by mutual agreement postpone or reschedule a hearing. That's just in case, but I think one of the things that we want to do at every meeting, and I've said this from the beginning, is at least at the next one or two negotiation sessions, and maybe even talk about a monthly schedule as to what's going to be going on. Because although we're doing ground rules right now, once we start getting into once we get the ground rules done, we'll be getting into proposals, and that can start to move pretty quick. And so we're making sure that we're available, subject to, of course, make sure everybody's calendars work, but that we're going to be available to have fruitful negotiation sessions and that we make the most out of our time. Okay. And then we discussed this at the last time. 3B, negotiation sessions. Negotiation sessions shall be scheduled to allow for up to 8 hours of negotiations and caucus time, and will not last more than 8 hours unless circumstances dictate otherwise as determined by the respective bargaining teams. And this was placed in here so that, when we're bargaining and we're bargaining for a long time and we're dealing with some very, some big issues, lots of numbers, lots of, operations stuff, whatever it is that comes out, there's some information that has to be processed and discussed, and that takes a lot of time, thought, and effort from both parties. And so in order to facilitate a more productive negotiation session, we sought to limit it to the 8 hours, to the full 8 hours, so that if there's a reason to, or if there's more information needed, or some rest needed, or so that we can come back with a clear head, we can do so. And you can do so under the Open Meetings Act. If we decide to continue the meeting to the next day, that's a possibility. You know, not saying like, okay, we're just not gonna meet until again. What we do is if we agree, okay, you know, we still need to continue and work on this issue and we have everything that we need, let's recess to the Open Meetings Act allows us to work off of the public notice that we have and recess until the next day and start back the next day until the meeting is done.
The very next calendar day.
Yeah, the next calendar, it has to be the next calendar day. If it's not the next calendar day, then we have to renotice. But we can utilize that tool in order to make sure that everybody has a clear, fresh mind and that we're all, you know, and that we're,
Are we specifying at the end of each meeting that it's adjourned for the day
yes,
by both parties?
yes. Yeah, yeah, because, on this, if, the way that this is written, unless circumstances dictate otherwise as determined by the respective bargaining teams, and I think that, you know, I think it would probably have to be, yeah, we would adjourn, but I think it would work better if it was by mutual agreement if we went to the next day. And depending on the circumstances, I do not foresee an issue with that whatsoever, so. Because we're here to work. Okay?
To address the caucus time, are we limiting our caucus time at all? I mean, I understand today was kind of unforeseen, the issue we had, but I mean, to be a productive meeting, or is there gonna be any type of limit to it? If not,
I was not gonna, I did not propose any limitations, and I think that, although that it seems that it's not caucus time is a very important part of the process. So I did not seek to limit that. I'm not gonna limit the union team, and I would hope that you're not gonna limit us in trying to obtain information or discuss this or come to a resolution on what we need to propose.
Well, maybe not limit, but would we be able to say, well, if a caucus is gonna take over an hour, then that doesn't count towards the 8 hours of the day and will be added to the day so that we can continue and not lose that hour while we're.
So I think we're talking about two different things, because the question I understood, and maybe I misunderstood you, as to whether I was gonna limit the caucus time at all.
the thing of, our issue is to be able to use it as a productive time instead of just, you know, carrying on and carrying on. You know, it's kind of delay the meeting, you know, X amount of hours. If that's eating up into the proposed 8-hour time, you know, we're not actually gonna get any negotiating done with some unforeseen circumstances.
Right.
So it's kind of to curtail that, you know, and to be using the time productively for that meeting.
So I think that this is, what I would propose in the way that I read it, and the way that I envision it, is that the 8 hours of negotiation and caucus time would start from the date, from the time that it's, posted. For instance, today it was posted at 9. I myself had a caucus before the meeting with my team, and that you can do that as well. Once adjourned, and I believe the 8 hours, the way I envision it, the 8 hours is gonna start from whatever the posted time is. And I would include, caucus time, and because it is, we have to have the ability to discuss it and come out in open session and discuss it.
Yes.
Okay? So I think that's important. Once the meeting is adjourned, that does not prevent you from going into caucus again, if necessary, especially if we foresee or agree that we need to continue recess until the next day. You know, that doesn't limit the caucus time between that time either. But what I'm envisioning is an 8-hour, a guaranteed 8-hour day that would include, negotiating table time and caucus time. And sometimes, depending, I mean, you've done this before enough times where, you know, when there's a big article that requires information, you know, we'll meet in the morning and say, okay, and we'll, you know, somebody will receive a proposal and say, okay, we need time, we're gonna caucus, but it's gonna have to be, we're gonna have to continue at another date, you know, because we have to have we need to look at this. For instance, if it's wages or an economic, we have to go and we can't respond without costing it, evaluating it, going and doing stuff like that. So there will be those times when that happens. And it's just, you know, we just have to let the process work. And the envisionment of these ground rules is to allow the process. 15-hour day, not a lot gets accomplished after a while. And that's what I want to prevent. I don't want to prevent some sort of situation where things just stop. Yeah, where, where things just stop being productive and we start arguing or something like that. I don't want that to happen. I want us to have good
And I
communication.
think the intent of it is to, if we are gonna be a prolonged caucus because, factors or figures are being worked out, and we come back after an hour, 2 hours, to be able to okay, instead of stopping it there, let's continue that work, and it's gonna push beyond the 8 hours. It's not a hard line where, hey, it's 4 o'clock, and I'm sorry, we just came out of caucus, half an hour ago, and we'll talk about this tomorrow. To be able to continue to work, like I said, to streamline the process and I think that's,
I guess, instead of like taking hours at a time and just separating from the caucus, and you take the whole team to the room, everybody here at the table specializes in certain articles and what we're working on. Would we be able to break off into a committee and then your team goes and works on that while we're still continuing the contract and the other articles and touch on those, and we can keep the process going forward in a timely manner, but the article that we're stuck on doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna be waiting here or we're gonna be in separate room for hours on end, but the negotiation process still continues.
So that is just fact dependent on who I have available for my team and whether anybody who goes to the subcommittee, whether I need them to be able to hear the presentation or discussion on the other proposal. And so I think that's gonna be on a case by case basis based on that. But that's a possibility that we can talk about and work through as we go.
I think it'd be, reasonable that we can continue and have the expertise in the other room, getting everything figured out while we move on to the next article.
I'm talking about only your people going out or your people and our people?
You also.
Oh.
So like if it's a finance question, then Jesus is here and then whoever he needs. And our guys are trying to take care of that. And then we come into the vacation time. Well, we can continue to discuss the vacation time, whether it's having the caucus on the other one, come up with something and then they can come back and we can readdress it and present.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I don't want to limit, like I said earlier, was the ability of each team to take a necessary caucus to discuss.
We're not trying to, I guess, in essence, it's not limiting the caucus time, the caucus, it's just, I guess, trying to endeavor to make sure that everybody works within a timely manner, so.
Right, and I think.
That's the
The
biggest.
lead negotiator
So-
will still be in the room,
Right, and I think
it'll just be
that,
at the expertise of what
So-
the article is gonna be a prolonged period.
so I think this is addressed by the chief negotiator's authority and how they can, utilize their team and determine to utilize their team, like they can determine who they need at the time and whatever by the resources.
Yes.
So I don't want to get into that where all of a sudden I don't have the people that I need at the table to discuss an article or hear an article because they're somewhere else. Now, with regard to subcommittees, and working out issues like that, I'm all for it, and that can happen, that can happen at any time.
Yes.
So that can happen at anything because it's working something out, getting factual issues taken care of, and then it's presented at the public table.
Yes.
So that can happen on a non-negotiation day if we discuss, what subcommittees and what issues are gonna be talking about, or say it's a financial deal and we need to appoint somebody from our team and your team to go work out factual issues or some other.
So we can actually create subcommittees and on negotiating days is what you're saying, to be able to come up with a resolution to an article that when we later meet,
Yes,
will already be.
absolutely. And I think that would probably be a more efficient way of doing it so that if people of our negotiating team need to be at the table at the same time, we can utilize the off time because that's not going to encompass a quorum. They're not going to make any decisions. Any information will be presented here at the public meeting and then we will deal with it then.
For the sake of education, yes. For the sake of negotiations.
Right. So I agree on subcommittees. I've utilized them a lot and they have been very efficient and come up with resolutions, but I don't think that we're limited to having them meet while we're sitting here at the table, because it would be.
And then, again, we've done this on articles in the past where we reached the first article of the day, we're negotiating it back and forth. It's just a matter of how you're interpreting it. We set our guys with expertise on the side with city team at the same time, and they're going over it, and we're still working on other articles. And it's been to the point where they're actually at that table and they're working it out. They're still in the room and listening to the conversation that's going on. And then once they get a resolution to it, they come back down, they sit at the table, we come back to it, like, okay, you know what, now we have an understanding, this is what it is, and then we're in agreement, and we're ready to TA on this one. Well, we probably already went through another 2 articles while we were sitting here, and they were in the subcommittee right next door, or right at the next table, able to take care of whatever article we're doing.
Like I said, we're willing to consider that on a case-by-case basis, because, you know.
Yeah, of course.
You can't, on something like this, it's gonna be hard to be doing 2 things at once, listening and working something out. And if I need somebody on my team to discuss one, you know, I need to make sure that we're fruitfully discussing it. I have the people here and that we can work on it quickly. And so I think that if we address it on a case-by-case issue, that we're open to that. We have no problems with subcommittees. We have no problem with making the most out of the time that we have allotted for negotiations. We also want to utilize the time outside of negotiations in order to provide you facts or obtain information from you. That way we can have it available for the day of negotiation and for our caucus before the negotiation and after, okay? So there's no, you don't need a public notice for y'all to meet, you know, for your negotiation team to meet. We don't need a public notice for us to meet because that's our caucus. That is confidential because it's our strategy and what we're gonna do at that time. Same for you.
Yeah.
It's the public meetings where we're actually discussing the articles and the substance of the articles and coming to agreements with it. That has to happen here on the table. Like a subcommittee can come to an agreement. So, okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
You wanna put that in there, subcommittees and.
Or even off days instead.
I could put that in writing, that'd be good.
Okay, well, if you want to propose some language.
At a request. Right?
Yeah.
At a request from chief negotiators that your side can meet with our side. To discuss issues on.
Sidebar.
Okay. Okay, C, under 3 negotiation sessions, the frequency, the time, and the number of meetings shall be scheduled with due regard to the impasse deadlines imposed under section 174.152 of the Texas Local Government Code, or as otherwise extended by written agreement. During the negotiation sessions, either party may, during the negotiation sessions, either party may request a break or caucus during the negotiation sessions. Okay, is there any question on those? Section 5, schedule of presentation of proposals. This kind of lays out what the schedule is, as has been done and what was agreed to the last go around. A, the initial meetings, this was changed to meetings because we've had more than one, shall be for the following purposes. To set the initial identity of each bargaining team, discussion and adoption of the ground rules, and 3, general discussion of the schedule, format, structure, and content of the negotiations. B, the collective bargaining process for purposes of impasse deadlines under Chapter 174 Texas Local Government Code shall not commence until the first scheduled bargaining meeting at which a substantive proposal is tendered by one of the parties. This shall be denominated as the first bargaining meeting for the purposes of Chapter 174 Texas Local Government Code. C, the party's goal is at the 4th bargaining meeting, and this, I added a clarification beginning from the first bargaining meeting, because once we do the proposals, we want to make sure that we have at least 4 meetings to put everybody's proposals out on the table. Shall be the last shall be the last meeting any new initial proposals may be submitted in writing and presented by either negotiation team, subject to any mutually agreed modification of the schedule. I think before it may have, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but we upped it to 4, and we had a discussion on that just to allow us to be able to have time to put everything on the table. Section 5, news releases and printed matter. This has not changed from the last ground rules that were signed. During the negotiations, neither party shall unilaterally issue news releases or hold any press conferences in any form or issue any other printed material regarding the events during negotiations or the status of negotiations. B,
Is that including, city manager and city council?
yes. Yes, the only thing that the city does pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act is that we live stream because it's a public meeting, is that we live stream all our public meetings and they're archived and recorded and then placed for the public to be able to access them.
So if there's gonna be a statement given out on your behalf, whether it's the negotiating team or your clients, we're also gonna be included.
Yes, that's exactly, it's a mutual ground rule for both parties. Neither party shall unilaterally issue news releases. B, requests for comment or information by any representatives of the media shall be referred to the chief negotiator for each party, each of whom is authorized to handle the inquiry at hand at their own discretion, consistent with the spirit of these ground rules. Now, it would be consistent with A. Again, we want to maintain the integrity of the good faith bargaining process, and we want to do the bargaining at the table and not in the media. C, when the parties agree that a news release is desirable, such release shall be jointly prepared and released by the parties. A short statement of non-specific, or should be a non-specific nature, may be issued by either chief negotiator upon the request of the media, and such statement shall not be considered a violation of this section. D, in the event of impasse, I need to add of an impasse, as defined by chapter 174, Texas Local Government. In the event impasse is defined by chapter 174, the Texas Local Government Code is reached, the parties may at the time unilaterally communicate with the press or the public. So that, this goes all the way to the impasse.
Hopefully we won't get to that one, right?
I don't plan on it. I wanna come to an agreement on the contract. But, you know, that's part of the process and we just have to address it. And this was also addressed in the last one. Nothing was changed, from the last round rules on this one. Section 6, contacts during negotiations. Now, this seems to be the point of contention or the point of discussion here for these ground rules. And what I did was I took the language, I used the language from your proposed ground rules and integrated them into this. And it's A, the parties agree that all negotiations shall be conducted exclusively between the designated bargaining teams at the bargaining table under a public meeting. Neither party shall make any effort to bypass such designated bargaining teams during the collective bargaining sessions which have begun on May 20th, 2022. That's when we had our first initial meeting. This reiterates the statutory requirement of good faith bargaining. And then I know on B, the last time you had a comment, you had, the association had an issue with regard to the individual members of their association. They said that, you know, the comment was that we can't really control an individual, and I understand that. But one of the things that we as a city are doing, and that we expect of the association also, is that when we're dealing with collective bargaining negotiations and the duty of good faith, that we both educate our own, you know, I educate my clients and my people, and you educate your membership and say, look, this is where the bargaining happens here at the table. So I've generalized it to say the association agrees it will not actively engage in any bargaining talks with any elected official of the city of Laredo during any stage of the negotiations with respect to any issues that are the subject of bargaining and negotiations. At the same time, C, the city agrees to the same terms with regard to contacting, directing, or encouraging any such contact with the association during any stage, association membership, during any stage of the negotiations with respect to any issues that may be the subject of bargaining and negotiations. Of course, the respective bargaining teams have to be able to communicate with each other, right? And the lead negotiators. But the bargaining happens here. And one of the issues that came up was that, said, well, what if a city council member comes and asks me a question, or somebody from the bargaining team or somebody from the union about the issues that are at the table? That's where the education comes in. I've got to educate my clients as to what the duty of bargaining in good faith means and where the bargaining happens, and it's here. And that's why we have our designated bargaining teams and we have these public meetings. I expect that because, we have to educate our people, you also have to educate your membership as to what the bargaining process is, and what is allowed and what isn't allowed, and what's within the parameters of good faith bargaining. So we ask that. And if you are approached, if I were approached by a association member that's not part of the bargaining team, or that I don't, and they're asking bargaining questions, my response is, I understand your question, but because of the good faith bargaining law and the process, it'd be best if you submit that question, whether verbally in writing, to your bargaining team, and then we can address it at the table, and I think that would be the appropriate response if a city council member came to you and asked a bargaining issue, is that, well, because pursuant to the bargaining, duty to bargain in good faith, all the bargaining has to happen at the table, and if you have a question, you can ask your city manager or send it to the bargaining team, and it can be addressed with you and at the table, things like that. And I think that's all on 6.
And the reason that the last section was scratched out?
The reason was, because this had talked about the 60 days of bargaining, but on the section before, it talks about in the event of the impasse on D, that the parties may at that time unilaterally communicate with the press or the public. I didn't want D to be somehow considered in conflict of D. So I think it is implied, or should, and we'd be happy to consider the proposed language that this would be up to impasse.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because by striking that, basically, it's detailing that we can only talk to the public once impasse is reached. And we still can't talk to, or are we having people from the city considered part of the public?
No, no. So that's the media with the press or the public, where you're releasing stuff to the public. The contacts during negotiations would be during the negotiations and it would be up to impasse.
Okay.
And so you can add some language in there that would mirror the same, that this is effective up until the impasse pursuant to Chapter 174 Texas Local Government Code.
We could just put it back in, right?
Yeah. I mean, the
Well,
way it reads is, there was no issue to that before.
Yeah, and I was concerned about the conflict with letter D, so we can add that, but maybe just mirror the language. It says up until impasse is defined by Chapter 174. So that would probably be a better generalized statement.
Yeah, because I mean, at the point of, if it gets to impasse, hopefully it doesn't, because we want to address this sooner rather than later. By excluding that, I mean, it doesn't.
And that was not the intent.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably should have put the impasse in there, but I thought it would, because of the media part where it says that you can talk to the press and the public, that was the intention, and we're happy to consider that language that I think you even had it in yours, up to the point of impasse pursuant to Chapter 174. So, and that's the understanding, the intent of this, okay? Okay. Do you have any more questions on that one? And you could, of course, you can caucus and come back with questions if necessary.
We can always go just through everything else and then caucus about the questions and bring them back.
Okay.
Which kind of saves time, I think.
Sure. The 7 on the contract document, that's all the same. That's just talking about that it's in MS Word format. The chief negotiators will maintain a draft of the document. Adequate copies will be made. Copies of the draft of the documents will be made available to each party. And the final version of the negotiated contract shall be maintained by the association secretary as well by the city secretary. And E, we may need to talk about this because I'll show, in the next section, it's not necessary to record the negotiation sessions, like if you wanted to come, and it's not necessary, but you can. And each party can utilize note takers during the meetings where we're utilizing a note taker. The parties agree that there shall not be any I can't say that word. I don't know who wrote that one, but that was from the last ground rules. But I guess, like covert recording, basically, of negotiation sessions. There shouldn't be any secret recordings, and it's already publicly live streamed and pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. On open meetings, A, the parties agree that the negotiation sessions, except for team caucuses and any mediated sessions, are open to the public to the fullest extent provided by Chapter 174 Texas Local Government Code. B, the negotiation sessions will be publicly noticed and will be live streamed and recorded by the city as public meetings under Chapter 174 in the Texas Open Meetings Act. The recordings of the negotiation sessions will be publicly available and should serve as the minutes of the meeting. And the video just, it stands for itself. 9, bargaining process deadlines. Parties intend to conclude the bargaining process within the impasse deadlines contemplated by 174.153 of the Texas Local Government Code. I corrected that. It had a T instead of a G. Subject to duly executed extensions in writing as authorized by law. Each party reserves their statutory and other legal rights with respect to the bargaining process unless modifications are agreed to in writing. Negotiating time for bargaining unit members, X or 10. Section 8, the duly designated members of the association's bargaining team shall be allowed to attend bargaining sessions while on duty subject to the discretion of the fire chief due to the staffing needs of the department as determined by the fire chief. B, members of the bargaining unit who are not named members of the bargaining team and who wish to attend a bargaining session as spectators may do so only on their own time. No special prerogative or privilege shall be exercised to accommodate leave requests for personnel who are not named members of the bargaining team. And this is, did not change from the last ground rules. 11, miscellaneous provisions. These ground rules being the subject of a mutual agreement between the parties may be modified by agreement at any time to serve the interests of the bargaining process, provided, however, that any modifications to these ground rules must be in writing and signed by each chief negotiator. B, the ground rules are to be self-enforced as procedural rules for orderly conduct of business. The parties do not intend that these rules are binding as contractual provisions. What these rules really do is just establish the mutual understanding between the parties as to how the bargaining process is going to work. It just establishes the, the processes about how we're going to utilize the bargaining table, and it reiterates that we're both committing to bargaining in good faith. Okay.
On section 6, I mean, just the language that we kind of added, the ones that were in our original ground rules, our proposed ground rules, I think they kind of just summarize both B and C. I don't know if it's a little repetitive.
So.
Because the intent of that is just like how we're all here in good faith, to do negotiations here at the table to prevent negotiations from being outside of, the public meeting. And I think for the most part, we're just kind of repeating ourselves in A, B, and C. It's summarized mostly in A. I don't know if that's how you feel, but
so
what I read.
That is a good point. And we contemplated this part because I agree that we're all committing to bargain in good faith. But one of the issues that I heard was that in your proposal, the association bargaining team or the association members were still going to communicate with the city council members about bargaining issues. And that's why we wanted to make it clear so that we all understand what letter A means. And that means that if there's issues or any part of the discussion with regard to issues related to mandatory or permissive subjects of bargaining are related to, that we talk about it here at the table. And if there's any questions, that they be run through the designated bargaining teams.
Okay, in this case, since you are the representative for the city, if the city councilman, city manager, anybody in the city has a question, they're gonna get your opinion on the subject. If they want our opinion on the subject of why this is important or why the issue at hand is not being resolved or can it be resolved better or anything along the issue, or they want education, they're gonna get kind of a one-sided,
Well, and that's why I proposed. So, like I said, these meetings are live streamed and they're public and anybody has access to them. And they can listen to your explanations and the information that you present and any kind of arguments you have in for your proposals or your counter proposals. So just like with your team and you advise your team, I have to advise my team and my client and my party. And that's why if somebody comes up with a question, you're gonna take note of that question. You're gonna advise me of the question as the lead negotiator. I'm going to make sure that if the council member has reached out to you and didn't get an answer, that, reach out to you with that question, and you let me know, that I will reach out to that council member, obtain the question, and then present that question here at the table, and we discuss it here at the table. That gives you the ability to give your side of the story to that question, okay? So if we can commit to do that, I think that addresses your concern about being able to address the question, being able to provide your argument in your side of the story, and do it like that. So that's the way I intend for this to work. I'm the lead negotiator, but I represent the best interest of the city, and that includes the city council members. And if they have a question and I need to raise the question here at the table, that's what we'll do. So this isn't anything to stifle any kind of communication. The process has to happen here. The communication has to happen.
The process, and we're all
Right.
pretty much in agreement that the process of actual negotiating is gonna happen here.
Right.
Just saying is that what is being kind of limited to is what I'm trying to ask is basically, is this the direction that the city council, city manager is directing for us not to be in contact with them at all? Because according to the verbiage here, that's what you're asking.
So we had this discussion at the last meeting, and this does not cut off all discussion with city council members or city staff or the city manager, okay? You still have the ability to approach them or have discussions with anything except for, and what we're talking about is anything related to bargaining issues. For instance, because we have ongoing bargaining sessions that have opened and that are up for discussion under Chapter 174, the good faith statutory requirement of good faith bargaining requires that we do it here out in the open public with the designated bargaining teams. And so when you're dealing here and then you're going and bargaining again with another party from my party, that goes against what we're supposed to be doing here, and it could potentially be a violation of the Open Meetings Act as well. And so we don't want that to happen. But you can still talk to council members about anything that doesn't have to do with bargaining.
I mean, it's not bargaining, because bargaining's gonna happen here at the table.
Yes.
So when you're going and talking to a city council member about a matter that's open and here and related to the table?
It's presented here, and it's from what comes out of here, it's presented to them. I mean, it's not bargaining because they're not here at the table negotiating.
So pursuant to chapter 174, each party, meaning the entire city, who is the governing body is the city council, and the union membership is allowed to designate a representative to do the bargaining for them. And that is what we have done here. The city council has designated a bargaining team and designated a lead negotiator, and the city has done the same. And that's under chapter 174, and I can actually bring up the statute. So when you say that you're not bargaining with, when you're talking to them that you're not bargaining, you are in fact bargaining because they're the ultimate decider of that contract. They're the ultimate approver, just like your membership is the ultimate approver of that contract. The duty of good faith does not allow me to go to individual members in your membership and say, and try to convince them to vote a certain way, okay? That is your job, it's your membership. They have elected you to be the designated bargaining representatives, and they're giving you that authority to do that here. And then you're the one that communicates with them, just like I communicate with my client. And I have to make sure that I am, I think we're all here because we want to make sure that when we come to a resolution, that each of our parties are going to approve it. Okay? So I don't understand how, if under chapter 174 that we have designated bargaining teams here at the table, and this is where it's supposed to happen, how that is within the good faith bargaining that you can go to a city council member and negotiate something else over there.
We're not, it's just like a perspective. You're giving your 2 cents on a certain article, and we should be allowed to be able to give our 2 cents also, which is not in violation of good faith. It's just the interpretation of how you're presenting it to them, because we're not in those meetings to see how it's presented. So we don't know for a fact if what is being said here is actually being relayed over there.
So I commit to you that whatever, and I would expect the same from the union side,
Of course.
is that everything that happens here is being communicated just as it had. A city council member, just like you or I or anybody from the public, has the ability to click on that link and listen to everything that was said.
And as much as we'd like to think that that's going to happen, we cannot guarantee that they're going to be looking at this feed and taking care of their district and taking care of other issues with the city to be able to come up with it with a understanding of what we're negotiating day in and day out. So if there's a question that pops up, we would like to be able to say, well, you know what, we're at this point, we're making progress, and this is where we're at. I mean, no big deal, right? But if it's something where you all are giving them something and they're probably not still understanding and they want to approach somebody from the negotiating team, we should be able to allow also to go over what is being discussed here and where we're at.
This is the venue for that.
Okay.
This negotiating table, which we're meeting at, and which is subject of the public notice for a public meeting, it should happen here. And this should be the forum by which you
So then,
make your arguments.
at the same aspect, then if the question's here, then I guess in order to fix it, a member of the council would be present to be able to sit in and then understand where the negotiation's going.
A member of the council is more than welcome to attend and participate. They are not part of the negotiating team, and they're not authorized to be up here because we've been designated by them to do so. But they're more than welcome to sit there and have the ability to come sit in and listen.
It's not the meeting.
I mean, that's just our stance. It's just is the interpretation. If they don't have the access to be able to have the time to be able to review an 8-hour day that we negotiated on, what our stance is on the issue be able to be read.
Well, and that's why the purpose of this, the purpose and the scope of what the ground rules are and what this negotiation is extremely important. Because I think that in order for this to work, there has to be open communication and trust between each party. Because just as you have your membership and you're gonna advise them and tell them what's going on here. If I have any questions, or I have any issues with any proposals or what it is that we're discussing, I have to do it here. I can't go to your, I can't hold a workshop for your, for your membership and say my side of the story. Because what my side of the story or the city side of the story has to be discussed here at the open meeting. Do you understand? And that's why it's a public meeting. Anybody can attend. It's available for anybody to watch at their convenience. So I'm not, I don't know how to remedy that because it is the city's position that the bargaining happens here between the designated teams, and any discussion with a city council member on the side on any issue related to a bargaining matter, whether it be mandatory or permissive, whether it has been put on the table or could be put on the table, that goes against the duty to bargain in good faith.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Who came up with the proposal back in 2018?
I don't know, I wasn't here. Oh, I'm sorry, 2018, not 2014.
Yeah, 2018.
I don't remember, and I don't have that information, but it was the information I do have, or that it's, I don't have the notes.
Okay, Ms. Hayward.
Yes.
She's the other negotiator, right?
Yes.
So it was your firm that came up with it?
No, I don't, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with it because as we have gone here, we go back and forth.
Okay.
But ultimately, what we're working off
The reason I asked, I'm sorry.
and what we're working off of is what was already agreed to in 2018, and that's why we started there. We did not think, we thought that it would be, it would be something that would be pretty easy to agree to since we've already done this.
If, in the 2018 agreement, it says, the bargaining team will actively engage, no member of the bargaining team will actively engage in any substantive bargaining talks. And that pretty much,
Well, and we proposed that before, and that's the language that that's why when.
That's not the language that's here, that's why I'm asking.
That we presented today? Right, because we proposed our first proposal, we received your proposal, and then we showed the changes to the language that we made.
That was agreed upon by
That was agreed. Right, the original, you're right, the original one was agreed to by everybody. And that was and I can't remember if there was any kind of change, if any, to the one that we presented at first.
Yes.
But the reason that there's a change today was because we took into consideration what was said at the table and the intent of what it's supposed to mean to bargain in good faith. And that's what the proposal is today, and it's indicated.
Based on your recommendation.
And the changes are indicated.
Yeah, and the thing that we brought up in the last meeting, was that the verbiage did change from the 2018.
Okay, and it may have,
And that's why the verbiage that was proposed, actually limited, and that's why we brought up the issues that we're talking about today.
I think that and I don't have my notes, I left them in the office, but if I recall, do you have the old one?
I didn't go get them. I'm sorry,
This is this the one from 2000? No, I need the one that was already signed.
The first one that she gave us this last meeting.
Okay. We discussed I went through every change that was made between the 2018 and the first proposed ground rules. Okay. So, if you look at the 6A,
it's changed here from your first proposal to what was agreed on back in 2018. As I'm saying, right now we're working on things that we voiced because of the change from the original.
So the original one on contacts during negotiations was 6A. The association agrees that no member of the bargaining team will actively engage in any substantive bargaining talks with any elected official of the city of Laredo during any stage of the negotiations with respect to any issues that are the subject of bargaining and negotiations, correct? So then, when we did that was in 2018. when we did, the first proposal, the only addition was this. The association agrees that it was no member of the bargaining team, and the addition, and we did discuss this at the first bargaining session, and no member or representative of the association, and then it continued, will actively engage in any bargaining talks with it, and not everything else is the same.
Yeah.
So the thing that we add, and that's what we addressed, the thing that we added was, and no member or representative of the association. And then that's when, Davos raised the issue with, well, we can't control, there's, what if we can't control our individual members? And I said, okay, I understand that.
I also raised the issue that this limits to anything that is talked about. Over here, this one states substantive, which means actually, basically active negotiations.
So,
This wording over here, goes back to what, Mr. Alvarado was saying, that if there is a question for education purposes, we are able to talk to, if they ask us, we're able to tell them. That's what the intent of this was, I believe. Again, I wasn't present during this one, I really can't confirm, from everybody. This wording proposed in the last meeting actually just blankets, any communication. And that was.
and communication with regard to negotiations.
You see where we're.
So I think that you're trying to make a distinction about talking about different levels of talking about bargaining. And so you're saying you want to be able to talk to city council member about bargaining, just not substantially. And I'm not sure what that means.
What I'm saying is, we're not gonna actively negotiate or ask for something specifically from any council member, because that's not what negotiations are about. But again, when we're in talks with any council member and it is asked or an issue is raised, a question of what's happening during negotiations, your verbiage on your proposed blankets that we can't talk to them and we have to refer it to, they have to refer it to you, as opposed to here, if they ask specifically, Article 1, Section 1, why can't you get past it? What is it that you're trying to argue, or why are you trying to bargain? Like, well, the intent of it is this.
And isn't that part of bargaining?
Yeah.
If you're explaining the intent, isn't that what you do here at the table?
Well, that's, again, referring back to the education that they get from.
I'm having a hard time between the distinction of levels.
Language to what chapter 174 is. I mean, chapter 174 does not state or even restrict us from doing any of what's in the works.
So I just want to understand, like, why are we here at this table if the bargaining's not going to happen here?
We're not saying that the bargaining's
We're
not
not
gonna
saying it's
happen.
not gonna happen here. We're just.
But you want to talk to the city council members individually.
We're not saying that we want to, we're saying we're approached. But 174 does not specify any of these added ground rules that are in here. I mean, it doesn't restrict us from doing it, so why would we agree to it?
So the duty to bargain in good faith, chapter 174 actually does state that each party can designate its representative to do bargaining.
Yes.
So that's within that, and that encompasses the duty to bargain in good faith.
Yes.
And that is section 174.106 of the Texas Local Government Code, and it states a public employer or an association may designate one or more persons to negotiate or bargain on its behalf. And that has been done.
Yes.
So so the city's bargaining team is the designated team by which to bargain and discuss these bargaining issues with on behalf of the city council. And that's their prerogative, just like the union has its prerogative to designate who we bargain with.
So in the event that we are approached, what is your recommendation that we do?
What I discussed earlier, a proper response would probably be that is subject to the negotiation process, and you can present the question to the bargaining team. But I I would say, if I were approached by a association member, I would say, I can't discuss this while not in the bargaining process. I can't discuss it with you because of chapter 174 and because also there's open meeting issues that may arise. So I would recommend to them, if it were me, I'd say, I would recommend that you present the question to your bargaining team, to present it at the table where it needs to be discussed.
And I know last meeting, when we met, I guess we asked what are the consequences for some of these ground rules, you know, I know over here in miscellaneous provisions, it states that these rules are to be self-enforced. You said that there was no consequence, right?
Well, the ground rules themselves, I explained, are basically a process by which we agree that this is how this is gonna work. It doesn't form a contract between us. It's not something that I can say, you've reached the contract, or you can say you reached the contract, Roxy, or something like that. It's an agreement. But you have to remember that under 174, there are also requirements that the parties have to negotiate in, and the main one that we're dealing with here is the duty to bargain in good faith. And that has its own set of remedies.
Would you be willing to include maybe a better C on it to include that violation of the rules would not be construed as negotiating in bad faith by an examiner, for example?
The city's not gonna be willing to waive any rights that it has under 174 with regard to that. I don't think that the city's gonna be willing to do that.
I guess there is consequences for the.
So the ground rules are the ground rules. The duty to bargain in good faith is a statutory requirement. So
Both sides agree to follow chapter 134.105.
Well, I think the issue here is that it is to become apparent that there's two different understandings of what bargaining in good faith is.
So you don't want to go with a statutory mandate of good faith?
We are going with a statutory mandate of good faith, but I'm concerned because from what I'm hearing from the other side, that includes being able to go talk to city council members on bargaining issues. If you're approached.
Can I control what others do?
Right, but you can control what the bargaining team does, right? So if a council, what do you propose? What is the designation? If a council member were to approach you with a question?
I mean, I guess we could do it like the media. We can do a subcommittee deal where lead negotiator meet with certain council and then address what the stance is on each side, and then we can still come back to negotiating table and negotiate. Right.
So a subcommittee, you say that again, so I understand?
Similar to what the subcommittee would do. If there is a question, the same way we would address the media, lead negotiator can sit with said councilman, address the question, and then move forward.
That's a possibility. That is, we are the bargaining team on the council, so we would have to discuss that with him.
I mean, it takes care of everything. Everything's, we're not trying to negotiate in bad faith, but
right. No, I understand.
Again, we're trying to be able to negotiate the contract and be in good terms with the other side of the negotiating team, and still following in good faith.
Right. That may, I need to consider that. If questions come up, whether we can set a meeting with the council member and the two negotiating teams, that may be a solution, but I have to discuss it with my,
as we are coming up to the scheduling, I mean, I'm pretty sure that we could schedule something an hour before our actual meeting, and then I understand that you have travel that you have to depend on, or even if you come in the day before, it can be the day before, we can discuss the issues with whatever questions that they may have, and then next day we can come and negotiate and take care of what we need to.
Has the city council approached the anybody yet?
Not that I know.
Is it? Have they done in the past?
I've never been any negotiator before, I believe.
There was a contract where went over the extended time, and I think we didn't get it signed till a couple of months after the expiration date. And there were questions that were asked just because we were at the table and we couldn't come to an agreement. Finally, I think it was like 8 months after the expiration of the contract, we finally were able to agree with the city, and we went forward with the following terms of that contract. But, I mean, they were not looking to go to impasse or anything else.
Yeah, I'm not either,
We did not foresee anything like that, but to take care of anything, because, I mean, we are members of the community, we do events that kind of coincide sometimes
right.
with certain people in the community. I mean, if we're gonna be asked questions, okay, well then, you know what, responsibly, we can let you know. And if it's a question that needs to be addressed, then we can set up something. And then, like I said, with the scheduling and everything else that comes with it, I'm pretty sure that we can get something that works with their schedule and the time that we're meeting to be able to sit down and say, well, this is what it is for this article, and we're ready to move forward. Or, you know what, if this is the concern, let's address it right here, because, I mean, we need to move forward.
I'm all for working together to get issues and questions answered.
Okay.
I am, and if, I think that may be a creative solution to address the issue, to make sure that you have your say and have the council members' questions answered, and that we're still within the duty to bargain in good faith, and that we don't do the bargaining outside, but we provide them factual information together. I think that may be a solution, but I need to absolutely consider it with my team. But that sounds like something that may be a probable solution.
Okay.
Would that fall under the same thing as my colleague here said, that we wouldn't really need B and C if A is already on the table?
That if we can,
I mean, if we're actually doing it, actually
We're considering a subcommittee.
I think that it would fall under A and we don't need B and C as part of the. Right?
yeah, and so, well, yeah, one of the other, yeah, I need to consider it. If you have some language you want me to consider, or our team to consider, we can do that. And at the same time, we can talk about it, the concept, because right now it's just conceptual. I haven't seen the language. So that's something that we can definitely consider.
Because the intent, I mean, it's, I think clear on both sides, the intent of what we're trying to agree to here, to basically negotiate here.
Right.
Have, be streamlined, be productive throughout as much as we can avoid any even approaching impasse. And in case any questions arise on either part.
Yeah, this is.
So we can both formally come up with the ideas of why the issue is at hand.
Right. One of the other solutions is that if that council member has some questions, we can definitely accommodate a session for them to come ask their question, or be presented with something, or listen to something.
Yes.
So, and they still have the ability to do that at their convenience, at the drop of the link.
Okay.
And so we have that. And we're taking notes, so that way we can at least kind of figure out where on the recording certain issues are being discussed and things like that. So.
Can I bring up something on authority of chief negotiators on the tentative agreements?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I get that?
Section C.
Yeah. Yours.
Section C, where it talks about the tentative agreements that are in writing and initialed by the chief negotiator shall be treated as concluded and off the table where parties to proceed to other issues. Could we add a language to say that would say a copy will be timestamped and a copy will be made available to the city negotiating team and the association negotiating team? And just for the fact that we can keep records as we're getting our stuff TA'd, that the language is correct and what we agreed to is correct. That way I understand that you will be in charge of going back and then putting everything in Word format, and everything is just exactly how we agreed on.
So everything, as part of the open meeting, just like city council meetings, when documents are presented, they're public record and they're posted as part of the agenda packet. One of the things that we're trying to do in order to make it easier for both teams to be able to go back and find those documents and see exactly what was passed along was, as part of the archive, it's going to include, for instance, the proposals. And when we sign the ground rules, that'll be on there so that it's easily found by everybody, that it's easily found and that it helps keep a track or an account of
Is
that.
it found the day of, after today we agree on ground rules, it's gonna be already?
It'll take like a couple of days to,
So-
I
so-
think we're trying to work out the logistics about getting the documents into, and the agendas, just like you would for city council, but we're gonna bring in a copy machine,
So
okay.
it's because in the past, when we've had tentative agreements, and then we are under the understanding that the city side's gonna go back, retype them, and then bring them all out. When we look at them, there's discrepancies in what was agreed and copy that day, then as to whatever was typed up, and we got a couple of days later. And it was blamed at the time, well, you know what, the person that typed it up, I guess didn't have an understanding, and it's like, well, you're doing it word for word.
Sure, so the way
So
that.
we have that to fall back on to say, look, this is what was agreed on,
Sure.
this is what we're gonna do.
Absolutely,
And
I agree with
we
that.
get it corrected.
And, I think, are we gonna bring in a scanner? We can, I think we can bring in a scanner so that we can, because what I like to do, is to make sure that everybody gets emailed the same thing, the legislative format, so that it can be reviewed, and then whatever we sign, we can sign it right then and, we'll get it finalized, sign right then and there, because I like to have the tentative agreement signed on the record, and so that everybody has a chance to review it, make sure there's not a typo, or somebody didn't accept a change that needed to be accepted, or something, because, we're all human and things happen like that.
So I guess
So-
the thing that separates it would be the official timestamp with a seal from the city saying that, and we can bring a
Oh,
seal.
with a seal?
And we can bring a seal on our end, that way this is what's agreed
I
on.
have to figure out, I don't know
I know.
about the seal.
Matt, in the past, or we've done other collective bargainings with, for example, police department, we both initial law, there's an initial by two negotiators based on whatever corrections, for example, in writing. And then someone is responsible for typing it all up. We come back and say, okay, based on what was initial law on this particular page, there's a comparison, it's good, it moves on.
But
So I'm gonna-
the seal actually makes it official, and then that's what is agreement, that's gonna be the official one that's gonna go on the actual
Well, there's
contract.
a lot of. people that are in
So
writing.
this is,
Yes.
can I
but-
talk about that, because
But if you
I'm,
timestamp it, it brings it back to the date that, in the opens meetings that we're meeting on this date, well, at the time, within the 8 hours that we were here, here's the timestamp that we were actually negotiating on this, on the date that we negotiated with this.
I need to figure out those logistics, but the way that I work in doing all of this is everything, I keep a running, I'm getting and I'll send it to you. What I want to do for these proposals is agree to a Word format of the contract. That way you can compare it to the one you have. I can compare it to the one that we have, and we make sure that we have the correct contract. The PDF one that's signed.
Yeah, because
So that
I
way
believe
we have-
the issue has come up in the past, and especially when going from PDF to Word,
Mhm.
where some of the verbiage kind of got mixed up, and
It changed the whole
it
article.
changed the intent
Right.
of the article completely.
And so,
And I believe that's why he's bringing that issue up, so we're
And
not.
it was agreed to, I think, the last one, where we were like, you know what, we're gonna scrap that one, this has been working for many contracts, and this is the one we're gonna go with. And it's just to keep the records in order, so that when we move forward and we actually do present the contract as a whole, we're under the understanding that none of the writing's been changed, none of the format has mixed anything up and changed any of the interpretation of what the article wants to do, and we're moving forward again.
so I think that you and I will work on getting, and y'all can work, but I'm gonna send you the contract that once I compare it and make sure, and then you can do your comparison. And then with each proposal, before it's TA'd, because we're gonna have to put that legislatively into the contract ultimately, is I always do once we have that designated original contract, I always do a compare. You know how you can do the review on the compare, and it'll point to any kind of discrepancy other than what's already changed. So, so I do that for our end. I don't know if you can do that for your end, but we can do that together on the side if we need to, outside of a public meeting, just to, like a clerical deal, just to make sure that we have the right one, but ultimately, we want to have an accurate contract, right? And we all want to make sure that and we're all human, and the human element, unfortunately comes in, and I make typos all the time. I make mistakes all the time, so we want to make sure that we have that we don't have any mistakes, and I'm all for that. Even if after the negotiations, we need to sit down together and go through it side by side and go, we want to make sure that we have the correct thing. But I will commit to you that we will make sure when we sign a tentative agreement that both parties will be able to have reviewed it, make sure it's the correct version, that nothing has been changed, and when we sign it, will all have already reviewed it, and we'll sign it here, and we'll print it out and sign. So we can have notes, but I just always make the changes on Word, so it's already documented. I don't do the notes.
With computers nowadays, you can shift the actual, change the format and then put the signatures into it, but like I said, we've seen where it just jumbles everything up and then now the intent.
Yeah, I know. I think we'll do the legislative format so we can review, and then we'll print them out and we'll review them, make sure that the copies are the right, and we'll physically sign them. And we can date them and time them ourselves. I don't know about the timestamp or a stamp from the city. I need to look into that.
I think they brought one up.
Okay.
Just pop in the machine.
Yeah.
We have our seal, we stamp it with our seal.
And then I think you said on the tentative agreements that you wanted to add language to, that if it related to another
Yes.
article, right, so don't forget that one. And we're,
And that's just in case, it's happened before where two articles
always.
intertwine.
Right.
You know what, no, we can't negotiate this already, well, you know what, we can still.
right,
Only with the understanding that the intent was because the second article is either going against what it says or changes the intent for whatever reason.
okay, absolutely.
You say, we don't wanna go back and something that's already been negotiated, well, let's negotiate again.
Yeah, no, yeah.
No.
We don't want a contract that conflicts, you're right.
So, we just need to work on that wording for the subcommittee.
Okay, how do y'all want to do this? Do y'all want to submit some proposed language to us?
Yes. Well, as wrote down off the top of my head, I guess would be subsection E, on Article 3. Subcommittee shall be allowed with members of the association and the city of.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
okay, which one, subsection 3? Our current 3.
Yeah, it'd be negotiation sessions, add E. Subcommittee shall be allowed with members of the association and the city of Laredo with an agreement from lead negotiators.
Okay, wait, subcommittee, let me write it down with my.
Yeah.
You already sold it back.
Do y'all want to,
Is a concept, I'm sorry to interrupt, for articles that are not TA, right?
Mhm.
So maybe we could start with,
Article 19.
yeah, is there an agreement that's not,
Okay.
do y'all want to write something down and email it to us so that we make sure not to jumble your words?
Yeah, let's do that because even then I'm reading out, I'm not sure.
Yeah, why don't y'all take some time and caucus
And
and,
we did order lunches.
Just in time.
so I need to email it to you then, right?
Maybe it's
I don't think I've emailed you the ones that I presented to you.
No, you didn't.
Okay, let me do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going into caucus?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going into caucus now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, whatever you guys prefer.
so I guess in reviewing the document that was presented earlier, association kind of made some changes that kind of reflect what was being talked about as we went on in each article. And hopefully that is able to capture kind of what the verbal agreement was between both parties before we took the caucus. And if you have any other questions or explanations, probably should be able to clarify some of that for you.
Okay, are we on?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry, something happened there.
Okay. So, I have the, copy and, it was emailed to me as well. So on, section 2 bargaining teams, you added Carlos Lozano and Oscar Delgado as the chief negotiators, right?
Yes.
I guess on the, just, grammatical, when it says, after Oscar Delgado and that the chief negotiator, there should be, we should probably add an S to that
Yes.
too, so.
Oh,
I'm just
the
noting
second
that.
one?
Yeah.
I added just for the first one.
one.
Yeah. And then, the designation of the chief negotiators, we'll put an S on that one too. The last sentence. May be replaced only by the directive of the respective clients, the city of Laredo and the association. And then on, section E, you added that the bargaining team for the association shall be number 1, Rafael Torres, number 2, Gabriel Campos, number 3, Jose Antonio Alanis, number 4, Leo Mendoza, number 5,
Victor Torres.
oh, there's a 5. 5, Victor Torres, I was just making sure the number was there.
Yes.
And 6, Adan Alvarado. Alternate members may be any current or past members. That probably needs an S, right?
Yes.
Members
Of the
of
association.
the association. Okay. The next change is we corrected, the section to reflect section 3, authority of the chief negotiators. That was just a typo fix. And C, we added the chief negotiator for each party with the consent of the bargaining team may make tentative agreements, TAs, or commitments regarding specific terms and conditions raised in the contract negotiations. Tentative agreements that are in writing and initialed by chief negotiators shall be treated as concluded and off the table, thereby allowing the parties to proceed with other issues. However, a tentative agreement could be revisited upon agreement of both lead negotiators in the event that a TA article conflicts with another article. A timestamped copy of the tentative agreement will be provided to both parties. Okay, couple things I'm gonna point out here. On the first sentence, remember we're talking about tentative agreements, we probably couldn't just actually tentatively agree because there may be a portion that needs to be addressed, like a definition or something like that. That or commitments, that I think that's gonna talk about the verbal agreements we're making on items that we could agree on, but if there was a specific, something that we needed to wait for another one, that we could wait for that portion, but we would commit verbally on all of that stuff. Do you remember that conversation? So I think that addresses that, just to make it clear. And then, however, a tentative agreement could be revisited upon agreement of both the negotiators in the event that a TA article conflicts with another article. I think maybe we just need to add a clarification to that. Conflicts with another subsequent proposal or proposed article, something like that. That way when we make a tentative agreement, we want to make sure that we have agreed to something and that we agree to open it up only if a new proposal will affect something in that agreement, and we want to make sure it doesn't conflict. So that's my proposal, that we could say another subsequent proposed article or proposal.
So the word proposed.
The word is subsequent.
Yeah, so then in the event that a TA article conflicts with another subsequent proposed article. Because the reason it's proposed, because we're gonna be negotiating it. So I think that would clarify it.
I don't know, the fact that it's being proposed would actually trigger that mechanism to go back and, but you won't really. And it's
Yeah,
perfect.
and I think that we all agree that the issue is that if we have a tentative agreement and we think that it's all done, and then we come back with a proposed agreement and somebody's like, hey, this affects the one we just did, that we can agree to say, okay, well, we need to bring that one back and address this one issue that it affects, you know, or,
Right.
so that's, if that, is that your understanding?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
As long as that's the intent, yeah.
yeah, and that's the intent. Okay. So as long as we have,
The next one, instead of proficiency, it's efficiency.
okay, let me look. So with that proposed just clarification, I think that one should be good. With the saying subsequent proposed article on the one we just did, section C.
Proficiency or efficiency.
Oh, we have not gotten there
Sorry,
yet.
I thought we were already there.
So then the next correction is that now it's a section, is that section 4? Roman numeral 4.
For some reason, I scratched it out, I guess.
So it should, yeah, there we go.
Maintain efficiency of negotiations as a proficiency.
Okay,
I think it's efficiency, right?
yeah, probably. Let's see, and D, or you added E, right?
Yes.
Upon the agreement of both chief negotiators, a subcommittee may be formed to gather information on a specific article to maintain proficiency of negotiations. Do you want that to be proficiency? Does that mean, should it be efficiency?
Yes.
Let's see.
Yeah, efficiency.
The last.
Efficiency.
Yeah, I think it should be, would efficiency work better?
Yeah, I think so.
So if we do that and it's upon the agreement of both chief negotiators, and, okay, that one should be good. The next, with the change to efficiency, the next one, okay, so then we change it to section 5, schedule a presentation for proposals. And then on C, I think this was what we had beginning from the first, which basically says beginning from the first bargaining meeting. And that looks like, that one's okay, is that?
Yeah, we don't change it.
We did change on A, just added S to the meetings instead of meeting.
Oh, yeah, and we're eight.
I
think we're on the second initial meeting.
Oh, yeah, on section A, you added S. Okay, thank you for pointing that out. I think I need your glasses. Yeah. Okay. And the next one is change to section 5, news releases and printed matter, and everything there looks good, correct? And then the next change is,
I think we added, an A, actually.
oh, that's right. Sorry about that.
A short statement of a non-specific nature.
Yes.
Was added in A.
That's correct. Okay. So that one's good. Then we change it to section 7, corrected the section, contacts during negotiations. And the first part, the parties agree that all negotiations shall be conducted exclusively between the designated bargaining teams at the bargaining table under a public meeting. Neither party shall make any effort to bypass such designated bargaining teams during any stage of the negotiations which have begun on May 20th, 2020. Okay, B, this section applies only during the original 60 days of bargaining as defined by these ground rules and any agreed extensions. So, yes, we have removed, yeah. So can we include, just from the beginning of the negotiations, which is May 20th?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The beginning of the negotiation, because the way that the ground rules have state, like the 60 days does not start running until after we finish the ground rules. And so when we were talking the last time, we all, I think that we were all on the same page that the negotiations already started. So I just wanted to include from May 20th to plus the 60, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And then-
68 starts May 20th?
So I think that's what may be easier is to put from the beginning of the negotiations until any impasse is reached.
Effective up to impasse.
Effective up to impasse pursuant to chapter 174. That would cover from May 20th, then the 60 days, any agreed extension pursuant to the rules, and then the impasse.
You want that in B?
Mhm.
Even though it's already mentioned in A.
What do you?
Because he's saying that he sees this there, but that's different.
That's a
So
hearing in the state.
So then because it began on May 20th, on B, it says this section only applies to the original 60 days, so that's in conflict with the May 20th already. So, and the purpose and the intent was that, that we're doing the bargaining at the table here during right now, which is starting May 20th with the ground rules. And then the 60 days starts at hopefully the next meeting. And then there's a potential that if we're close, that if we need a little bit of time, that we can agree to extend those 60 days pursuant to 174. And then after that, then if there's any impasse reached, then that would be the end of the effectiveness of this section.
So you're putting this back to May 20th instead of doing it from the next bargaining negotiation or bargaining meeting?
No, it starts at the next meeting.
It starts at the next meeting, that's,
So
that
instead
was
of,
my understanding from.
Oh, so
so instead of original 60 days, it would be 60 days from
The next.
the next meeting? Is that what you're trying to say?
no.
You're
No.
going back to May 20th.
What I'm saying is that the bargaining sessions has started, and I thought that's what we were discussing, that, since we opened the bargaining sessions, that this would be effective during that time, because the 60 days, in effect, pursuant to what we've done the 60 days doesn't start until the next session. So, and we've already opened the bargaining session, we're talking about, how we're gonna do this bargaining, and we wanna make sure that that the good faith bargaining and the process is intact and the integrity is maintained during the, until, yeah. So that's all we're saying, because we had this discussion at the last meeting.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out what your proposed change to that
Oh.
particular section B is.
So I want to
States
include,
in May 20th.
yeah, beginning May 20th, and then I want to allow us to be able to extend pursuant to 174 if we pass it, for some reason we pass the 60 days. So it actually goes with what you had proposed before, was this is effective up to an impasse pursuant to 174.
So we go with extensions and everything else just falls into place, right?
Yeah.
Which just stay the same.
As long as we're as long as we're bargaining.
Yes.
And then if impasse hits, then it's no longer effective.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Is it easier? Yeah. And we can use, I think, some language that you propose. It's actually from your proposal this morning. We can use is this on B. We propose to say this section is effective May 20th, 2022, because that's when we started. May 22, how do you do that? The section is effective May 20th, 2022, up to,
Effective.
this section is effective May 20th, 2022, up to an impasse as defined by section 174, 152 of the Texas Local Government Code. Does that make sense? This section is effective from May 2022 and up to, and up to the existence of an impasse? Oh, up to when an impasse has been reached. And that basically covers the period we're talking about, just in a less amount of words. So we cover May 2020 till. So the proposed clarification we have is this section is effective May 20th, 2022, up to when an impasse has been reached as defined by 174.152.
Okay.
And then C, I'm gonna need a little bit of explanation on this one. Both parties agree to address any concerns, issues, and or questions brought up, raised by elected city officials and or association members in a subcommittee prior to or after scheduled negotiation meetings. Subcommittee will include but not limited to both lead negotiators and their designees. So does this, does this obligate both parties, and when we're talking about this situation, this is going to be more in effect when we're dealing with a council member.
Yes. I mean, we included association members just to be equal on both sides.
If they have any issues with you, like, maybe they wanna, I don't know, like, ask you something, we kinda wanna return
the courtesy.
Sure, but this.
With both of us here present.
But this obligates it if you say that a council member comes up and approaches somebody from the union bargaining team, that it automatically triggers this subcommittee?
No. No, this is just, I
guess tell me how you envision it working,
guess the intent and purpose is in case they come and, hey, how's it going? You know, how's the negotiation going? Oh, it's going good. We're, currently, under, Opus. Have you talked about this? Well, yes, but we're still hung up on it. Well, what exactly are you hung up on? That would trigger, anytime they would ask any specifics concerning the contract itself, it would trigger this language. If it's just, how's it going? No, I think it's going good. We're moving along. We might need an extension, we might not, or we're almost done with it. It's something very vague where, it won't trigger that. But if they want to know specifics of why are you taking so long, or what's the issue at hand, we can come back and say, hey, there is questions about it, they're being brought up by, elected officials. Can we address this? And that's where that would trigger, only in that case.
So, and would it, I guess, be by agreement by both parties?
Yes, that's what we put, both parties agree to, yeah.
Okay, well, the way that it's written here, it already says that we agree. It makes it seem like it's an obligation.
Oh, okay, rather than an
already.
option.
So if we can do it, if we can clarify that, it's kind of almost, I think we had some language like that on the subcommittee part. We can do like upon the agreement of both chief negotiators.
Okay.
A party can bring up an issue brought forth by, I'll come up with something, but upon the agreement of both chief negotiators, a party can bring up an issue raised by a council member or a member, and they can discuss whether a subcommittee is necessary, and we can agree to it, kind of deal, kind of like that.
Yeah, and I think that the wording, as we work it out, or how we address it, it will encompass both, both sides of what issues have been brought up. We won't be circumventing the negotiating process, At the same time, we'll be able to address, or educate our stance on on a certain issue and why it's important. And it kind of, brings them to the table, like, hey, this is exactly why we're doing this, or why our stance is our stance and the city negotiations team is their stance.
Okay,
So just basically to get it out in the open and bring it up there.
okay.
So with the words, upon the agreement of, in front of that, section, work for you as a change?
In front of both parties agree to address.
So the section C would start with upon the agreement of, and then continue with the way it's written.
Both parties come in.
So I think that we'll do, because the chief negotiator is like the spokesperson for the bargaining team, and of course they have to have consensus of their bargaining team.
Yeah.
And just to remain consistent, like, how we did on the subcommittees, I think we can use that same language. It says, upon the agreement of both chief negotiators.
And then just leave the rest.
I guess any specific or substantive concerns, issues, questions?
Let's see, let me read this, see how this sounds. Upon the agreement of both chief negotiators, the parties may address any concerns, issues, and or questions brought up or raised by elected city officials or association members in a subcommittee prior to or after scheduled negotiation meetings. Subcommittees will include but not limited, I have to talk about that second one. That last sentence, I have concerns about, because the subcommittee will include but not limited to both lead negotiators and their designees. I have an issue with that because we have designated quorums and how, and for the city, the quorum is the chief negotiator and one other person. And so one of the things I think that we discussed, that it would be the chief negotiators, because I think going any further than allowing more people there, it could potentially violate the Open Meetings Act if we're talking with them about negotiating items, and then it almost creates it potentially could create a second venue for negotiating. And we don't want to do that. What we want to do is address any kind of factual questions or what has been discussed at the table. So that's my concern with that, and I would propose that the subcommittee would be the two chief negotiators and the council member or the member. And then if there's any other issues, and we have to figure out how we could address that, because we're basically discussing negotiating items with somebody else, somebody that's actually going to approve the contract. So that's my concern with that. I don't want to.
We can, instead of adding, just put or designee or their designee.
Yeah, well, we can do or designee.
Okay.
So because
I think that was
it's.
our intent.
That was the intention, I guess.
Okay, because I didn't want there to be,
No, we didn't want groups.
if we
wanted
go
just
big
one.
groups and that doesn't,
Well, it was, that's what the flexibility was for, to allow you, the chief negotiator, to either do it yourself or.
Oh, okay, so we just need to change that last sentence to or.
Yes.
Okay.
But not limited to.
Oh, yeah, that's the not limited, but the not limited to, I think that's.
Well, I guess that gives you
That's the only
flexibility of
Negotiating
either-
limited to doing that. And if you choose to do so, I mean, it gives you the power to choose
Like if it's
whether you want her to be there, you to be there, or both of you to be there, because you need explanation on X, Y, Z.
Sure, so then I think the way it read, right now it says subcommittees will include but not limited to, so it makes it seem like it could be more people than that, so then
Like if
it
it's who's assigned.
it probably needs to be subcommittee will include
I guess we wanted to help you
both
out.
lead negotiators or their designees.
If you are presenting as a chair negotiator and the expert is on finance and you need that finance person there, do you want to be the only one there, or do you want the finance person to explain what's going on? And that was the only
So-
intent behind it, right?
Right, and so this is since it's the party and we have the finance people, we can discuss the question and the factual scenario, because we don't want to be negotiating at this subcommittee. And so the deal that we can do, right, educating, is we can commit to providing the information that they seek
Yes.
to them, or we can present it at the negotiating table. You know, and that's the deal. If it's information that's being sought,
Yeah.
then it's information that should be relevant to everybody.
Right.
So,
I guess we
so I
just
think we can take care, yeah.
give you flexibility more than anything. But
And you know, there's a lot of things that are gonna happen that we don't realize until it comes up. And we need to talk about it and make sure that we do the right things so that we have the information, you know? I think the intent is not to create obstacles, but to try and make this as smooth as possible and as collaborative as possible, and just got to kind of work it out.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
okay. So for the last sentence, I think that one's good, but the first sentence, I think if we put, what did I say, upon the agreement of both chief negotiators, the parties will,
may use it.
the parties may address. So I think it would do, upon the agreement of both chief negotiators, the party may address any concerns, issues, and/or questions brought up, raised by elected city officials and/or association members in the subcommittee prior to or after the scheduled negotiation meetings. And then subcommittee will include, and I'm gonna take but not limited to, because that kind of, yeah, I would say the subcommittee will include both negotiators or their designees. Okay? Okay, so that one, I think that, with that clarification, that was good. Yeah, so then, so that was a new C. We had two others that you removed. And then the last one is C. So the ones that you removed, I think, we're partly addressing it with the new C that we just talked about upon the agreement of both chief negotiators. I'm wondering if we can add, just so everyone is clear, maybe add a sentence to the end of A saying this would include either party communicating with a council member and/or membership during this time, something like that.
I don't think we can say communicating, but actively
Or negotiating.
Yeah,
You can put negotiating.
yeah, negotiating.
So, you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you're right. I don't mean communicate because we're not
Yeah,
putting.
we're not shutting off communication.
No,
we're just-
not at all. We just have to, negotiating stuff needs to be talked about here. So if we can add a sentence and say this includes, what'd you say? I was saying, let's see. This includes, you can put, this includes discussion of any bargaining items with any elected official or association membership. Elected official of the city or association member. Something just simple.
Saying it, but I keep. Discussion with elected officials or collective.
Are we saying that either party can make contacts with them? Because-
No, I mean.
Just because the previous sentence says that, I wanted to.
Oh, that's right.
If you're adding it to the end of section A, and the previous sentence says that either party will make any effort to do such thing.
You're right, because we need
This
to be.
includes, that includes, that means that you can't talk to your city council and you can't talk. to
No,
your-
that's not the intent. That's why I'm trying to talk out loud and so we can workshop it. But I just want a short little sentence that says that we all acknowledge, and especially because it's in C.
I just think that it does include it in A when you're saying that we both agree that negotiations be conducted here by
Okay.
both teams. I think we're,
As long as it's on the record that that's exactly what we mean, what has been outlined in, and one of the reasons we outlined it, like I said, was for clarification. And that you understand that when we're talking about A, the city's position is that means that the association will not actively engage in any bargaining talks with any elected official of the city of Laredo during any stage of the negotiations with respect to the issues the subject of bargaining and negotiations up, and we understand that it's up until impasse, because we have that already here.
We have the 60
And the
days
same thing for the city, that the city will not, contact directly or indirectly or encourage any kind of contact with the association to discuss any kind of bargaining at any stage of the negotiations up until impasse. So it's just as it's clear on the record that that's exactly what we mean when we're talking about this, and the way that we're addressing it is by the language that we have come up and see, right? To address that. That way, we have an avenue to address any concerns or questions that do come up, okay? And then, let's see, after that, then you corrected to section 8, contract document, and that's all the same. And then we, corrected to section 9, open meetings, and you were okay with the open meetings? It's pretty straightforward. And then, again, 10 bargaining process deadlines. On A, it's corrected to the TLGC for Texas Local Government Code. That was a typo I made. Then we corrected section 11, negotiating time for bargaining unit members. And then June 2022, we'll put in today's date if everybody agrees, and I think it's ready. So with those, if
I just have one question.
Sure.
Do you have a proposed language on an extension document?
Say that again?
A proposed, like a form already?
I don't,
Just-
we haven't even gotten there, but,
Okay.
I can look one up and send them over and we
It
can,
could be as simple as both parties agree to
Yeah,
whatever.
sure.
and-
I'll just pull up what was used before, if I can find what was used before, something that's already
And
been.
then what's the mechanism? I understand that, and just because I've been stuck on some other negotiations where it's Friday and the 15 days is on a Saturday and we're trying to scramble by getting signatures by both, these negotiators to make sure that we, appropriately sign the document. I just want to make sure that we agree on a mechanism of how we're gonna go about it. We got emails fine, scan, or
Yeah,
city, or?
Usually I think if we, the way I've done it before is a scan can be used as an original, as long as we both see it by email and the chief negotiators agree, yeah, these are all the correct signatures, we can use, and we all acknowledge this can be used as the original. We can do something like that. Mhm.
That's fine. Just want to make sure, clarify it.
Yeah. Yeah, in today's world, I mean, technology is really, really helpful, especially in things like that, so. And, we intend to fully utilize them to the best of our capabilities, and I'm not very capable sometimes.
When we can figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
There are some companies that prefer to fax stuff, though.
Yeah, I know, there's still some people that fax. So, what I'll do is, we can just take a short break, we don't need to caucus, but I can finalize this, accept the changes, email it to you, just so you can review it and make sure that it's a correct document. And, if it is, then we can come back in and, present the final document and sign it if, once you've, reviewed and approved it. So, you wanna do that?
Okay.
Okay, let me do that real quick. Anybody have any questions?
Break.
Okay, yeah.
But we're still in the
It's okay, no, it's okay, I'll work with others. Oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and we're just reviewing the final, and there may be there's a typo, you said?
Yes.
Okay, 7B.
7B.
This section is effective, right? Take out applies. Okay, so then it'll read, this section is effective beginning May 2022 and up to when an impasse has been reached is defined by section 174.152 of the Texas Local Government Code. And I went back and made sure that I pulled up the law just to make sure that that's
the actual section.
That's the actual impasse section, so
Okay.
I confirm that.
And the other issue was.
There was
the removal
Concerns on 7C?
Let's see,
Just
7C.
may address issues, concerns, and or questions, and concerns was just removed.
Was it?
Yeah.
That was inadvertent. I was just accepting. Oh, yes, okay. Address any concerns, comma, issues, and or questions, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it comes before issues. Address concerns, comma, issues and or questions brought up / raised by elected city officials and or association members in the subcommittee prior to / after scheduled negotiation meetings. The subcommittee in this section will include one lead negotiator from each party or the designee. Okay. I'm gonna take out that comma after include.
Okay.
It's telling me that doesn't belong there. Okay. So say the subcommittee in this section will include one lead negotiator from each party or their designee. Okay. Okay. And I think, and I was just doing one last read through, make sure that there wasn't anything, but once I finish that, I think, let me save this as the final. And then we'll take a short break to print it out. And
The final.
give them, I'm gonna put final. Okay. And just, I'm gonna email it to you. Okay. Okay, and I'm emailing to you just so you can confirm the changes that were made that you pointed out, and then I'm almost done.
Yes. Let me see.
And then we're gonna take a short break again.
Yes, voting form.
Okay, thanks. Mm-hmm. Okay, for a donut. Signature's correct. The signature part of it. Four, five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's in one. It doesn't matter.
Did you email it already?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think.
Yeah,
I
we
have, I didn't get an
attached.
attachment. I got the email, but no attachment.
Oh, sometimes it doesn't, okay, let me try it again. I did the attachment, I guess it didn't load. Having the connectivity problems this afternoon. Sorry, thank you for telling me. Okay, there it goes.
I don't have a lot of them.
Oh, and there's a typo in my name also at the bottom.
Oh, there
The
is?
signature. I just saw it right now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, okay.
We have printers and everything. I
Don't
just saw
still-
it right now.
Let us see, I had asked for
That's what I'm saying,
corrections on
Not last
meetings.
contract, they bought a
No,
printer.
I didn't.
Say that again?
We still
I wanted a correction on meetings, we were discussing this one, it's not on this one. Schedule, letter C, and it's meetings.
A long time. I don't know if they correct.
Just got to sit closer.
On this one? No, it should be from the first bargaining meeting. Oh,
Meetings.
no, that's fine,
One time I
you
had
just
to
need
put
the first one.
They met at the airport.
the airport.
And when they're gonna part of the airport here, and I think there was no.
Oh gosh, right. Oscar, do you have a middle name you want? or-
No.
Okay.
No, man.
Oscar Delgado. Oscar Delgado.
Yeah, we did it in the hallway, like, a couple of times.
So I fixed your name on the
Yeah, no.
new one.
Okay.
Like a little copy room built on that.
Mr. Lawrence, please.
Oh, library?
Y'all have to post it very good.
Okay, so everything, I fixed Oscar's name.
Yeah. It's still-
Okay, I'm gonna have them printed out and, this should be the. Printer? I'm gonna copy you, Oscar, so I don't have to send. And what we can do is we can sign 2 originals, like we did with the other one, so you have one and I have one, and, I can scan them and email them if needed, so that y'all can have some, have it in email as well, you know, sometimes you can keep your file by email.
It's more convenient.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to find.
Recently?
We're gonna put it on break. until we get the copies? Right.
Huh?
You wanna go on break, or?
I think we are on break, right?
No,
It's still,
Okay, well, there,
Oh,
I don't know how long it's gonna,
Well, that's what I was gonna suggest, if you wanted to talk about the dates while we wait for.
yeah, that would actually be a good idea. Okay, so, what dates are y'all looking at? I know that, Ralph had provided me some dates. And, we were looking at the, Wednesdays.
okay.
The Wednesdays during July, beginning with, I think it was after the July 4th holiday, so. Actually, I don't know that we're able to have the people that I need on my team. And I think that Ralph had provided the week of July 11th through 15th, so we're looking at the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th.
Well, I know Ralph had, talked to me and emailed to you about doing the initial first two meetings back to back to both come with proposals of ours and yours, one after another.
Okay.
I think that would be,
Oh, 2-day.
Yeah.
Like a 2-day one, like a first one, so maybe we can do,
would you guys be able to do June? I know Ralph said the 10th of July, but sooner, I think, the better.
so I think we need, what time? So we have next week I'm out of town,
okay.
and then the week after that, you're out of town, and I have surgery. So I think, I was looking at that, maybe we can do, I don't know if that last week of June may be possible. We need to double check that. But in the meantime, let's look at the last week of June, get some dates. I'm thinking like we can do a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. But for sure, let's book up the 13th and 14th maybe.
And then we go up to
Of July, right?
Of July, yeah.
and then work up to the other.
Yeah, let's book July dates and let me check on the June dates, and I'll make a commitment that by Tuesday, let's get together and figure out those dates, because I know that they,
Possibly the 29, 30, or 28, 29,
yeah,
but for sure, July 13th.
yeah. I hadn't checked with my team on the 14th, but I think that we can make it work.
Okay.
So we can do 13, 14, and then do the 2 subsequent Wednesdays after that.
13, 14, and
The
then
20 and 27.
20, 27.
Yeah.
And tentatively still possibly the last of June.
Wait, when is that?
Yes, you mean, yeah, and then tentatively,
Either 28, 29, or 29, 30.
yeah, and let's book, so for sure we can do the 13th, 14th. We can for sure do the 20th, 27th. I need to make sure with my team to see whether we can do 21 and 28, because once we get into the 4th meeting, we're gonna be into the meat of things, and we might need some time to get some documents or something. But in the meantime, let's schedule it, because it may work. And then you and I can have discussions with our teams, and then we can visit on amending the schedule as necessary, okay? Yeah, I have to do a presentation on the 29th
June?
of July, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? I do have I'm giving a presentation.
June's gonna be hard for us to be truthful, because we're working on budgets just overall, so we can present to council, so.
And I actually am doing a presentation in Austin on the 28th and 29th.
Yeah, I think the first meeting.
So
Thankfully.
before the end of June, you wanna get done with us? And
Part of it, right?
hey,
You can.
it make your
Let's
job a
just
lot
stay here all
easier.
weekend. Let's get it done.
We can do it, just flip a coin. Which one do you want?
Okay, one or two.
One or two.
Airbnb.
That's what guys, the fire chief has a barbecue pit next door, we can get that to cook.
So we'll look at we'll see if there's anything possible for the last week, if even a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, but for sure, let's do 13, 14, 20, 21, 27, 28. And as we approach 20, 21, and 27, 28, we'll talk about how we're gonna, whether we need all those meetings, all one right after the other. We may need to spread them out a little bit, and it may even be like where we move it to a Tuesday and a Thursday rather than back to back or something like that.
Okay.
Okay? But that way we're working and we start getting stuff moving.
We start hating each other after we see each other too much.
We're gonna make those best friend shirts.
We could have put those into the ground rules.
We could have.
Are we saying tentatively is the 13th and 14th?
Yes.
Sure.
13 and 14, no, the July dates, we're setting them.
You're right.
13 and 14 is gonna happen. Yeah, because those are the initial ones, I think that we'll both have proposals to be putting on the table. As we get into the 2021, we're saying 2021, 27, and 28, as it progresses, we need to see whether we do need a little bit more time to get some information or see how it happens, or whether we can get it pretty quick, or.
Yeah, no worries. Are we at that point after those two first initial meetings that we're gonna have to sign an extension on that 60-day deadline?
No, the 60 days starts
On that day then?
on the 13th.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
So that's why we want to start setting the meetings, because we have that 60-day deadline to work with.
Yeah, and I think that's where the misunderstanding I had when you put in the May date on it. I thought you were till the next one, and you're including the first one.
Oh, yeah, that was just for the negotiation session. For the
Yeah.
60 days, it starts once we start putting proposals on the table,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, that because
Once everybody's ready.
I thought that's what we agreed to the last time, and it just threw me off.
No, and I'm sorry, so, yeah. I guess that sometimes I don't explain myself very well. Okay, so we'll do, did you take notes on the dates?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
13, 14, 20, 20, 21.
And the 27, 28?
Yes.
For June.
July.
July.
27, 28 for July? I thought 27, 28 for June.
No, that's for July. We're doing all July.
All of it July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna see if there's anything we can set for June the week before, but I have a presentation either the 28th or 29th or both in Austin that I need to do. And I'll make sure that, when we post that, I'll email it to you. Goes.
Yeah, June would just be if possible. That's fine.
Okay, and that is the 27th to the 1st. Okay.
No, we just need to wait and sign?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're just waiting for the
Copies.
copies. Is there anything other than schedule? I don't think that there's anything else that we needed to talk about, right?
I don't think so. I mean,
No, just, pretty much the schedule is the biggest question, I guess,
Mhm.
going forward.
we covered all that. I guess we're just waiting on the paperwork, so. The official recording of a signing is a must.
Yeah, we should do it on the,
Record.
in the public meeting and on the record. I think we've spent 2 hours at least fighting with the printer today.
Ours was probably longer than that.
We're probably longer, right?
Longer than that.
Because that was, most of the time, when, at the beginning, that was our issue. We were fighting with the printer.
Technology is supposed to make your life better, but it can make it more stressful.
I agree. We're trying to alleviate that for the next one. We're gonna bring in a copier and scanner and hope that it doesn't give us problems.
Back old school.
I used to have one of those little, it was a little portable and it'd make a noise, but everybody'd be staring at it because it printed page by page, line by line. But it worked.
Yeah.
Go ahead and leave.
Yeah.
What do I do with it? Okay.
Here's the new one, right?
This is, oh, this is one.
That is Omar.
Yeah, make sure it's the Oscar one.
Yeah, that's how that's how I know.
We're live and streaming.
Okay, so here we, after the discussions that we had, we finalized, and reviewed it, and we printed out the final ground rules, and what we'll do is we'll have 2 originals so that each party has one. And, do you have, well, we can use one of these. So y'all can start signing this one.
Okay.
And we'll start signing this one. And the way it is, it's on the chief negotiators, there's 2 for each, so it could be either or. So I'm gonna sign for the city of Laredo.
Okay. I'll go and sign for the association.
And then I'm gonna have I'll have my team members sign on the left side, on this side.
On the left.
The city,
or
yeah,
the
'cause
right?
it'll go under it's supposed to go under, I guess, where my name is, so.
Right.
The city sign on this side, on the inside, yeah.
Do I sign this, some technically non?
The lead also.
You can sign on there and just indicate, lead negotiator on there as well. I feel like it, right?
Yeah.
Or a car.
The only thing is, Victor Torres had to step away, so he was not gonna be able to sign, but that's,
Okay.
and he was present through most of the day.
Yeah, it'll show on the sign-in sheet.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. So then, Yes. Is this the same order? Yes. Okay, and here we have the signatures. And I have these, there's 5 for each team. And you have the.
That's right.
Okay, and then 5 for each team. Perfect, okay. Well, really enjoyed today, and I'm glad that we resolved the ground rules. I look forward to getting to work and getting our stuff done. So for sure, we have the July 13th and 14th, July 2021, and July 27th and 28th. And then you and I will get together on or before Tuesday by telephone, and we'll discuss the last week of June and see if there's anything we can work out from there.
That'd be great.
And then in the meantime, as always, lines of communication are open to me, whether it be by you have my number, phone number or email. And if there's any information or questions that you require or need in order for preparation of proposals, feel free to let me know, and we'll start gathering the information that the city has that you need. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.
So we're adjourned?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Rosa.